Welcome to a new guide on this channel, and this occasion is the Arrange View mouse tools from Studio One, the ones we have right here at the top. Now, you might know some of them, so everything on this guide is in chapters. So if you look at the timeline, you can just jump to a section or just skip the ones you don't want. And as always, if you like this guide, like and subscribe. It's free. And if you have the money and you want to buy me a coffee to say thanks, you can. Everything is on the description. Right, so let's just begin. The first one is going to be the arrow tool. And if you're thinking the arrow is just way too easy for me right now because the only thing we can do is just select things, move them around, or select things and do delete and delete them. Yeah, we can do this, but but we can do a lot of other things. Now, before we talk about that, remember that with your keyboard, your computer keyboard, if you do one, you're going to be doing some special feature we're going to be talking about, but the one is going to be the arrow. If you go to the number 2, it's going to be this, the 3, the 4, the 5, the 6, the 7, and the 8. So you can just jump between the different tools just by pressing 1 through 8. So if I go to the arrow and I click it, it's giving me some information of some other things that we can do. So the arrow tool is like a chameleon. It's just like a chameleon. So it says select alternative tool and then control. So it means that we can perform a different action by doing control. So now we can do two things with the arrow, right? So okay, so let me just show you. I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger. So if I go right there and I go and select which tool I'm going to be using as a secondary tool or alternative tool, I'm just going to maybe do the split, right? So I'm going to do split. If I go right there with the mouse and I hold the control, it's just going to change to the other tool, right? So I can go right there and just chop it or just, do whatever I want with the mouse. I'm going to go back and right here at the bottom, you can select a different tool, and so on, and so on, and so on. Now, one thing that you need to notice is that the secondary action is going to be highlighted right here at the bottom. So if I select the split, it's going to be right there. And if I select the mute, it's going to be right there. Now, one more thing. If you're standing on the arrow, by just tapping the number 1, because he's already selected, you're just going to be cycling through the different options that you have available. And right now, I'm just pressing 1 many times. So if I wanted to select the this one, the paint, I just can tap the arrow many times and I'm going to go there. When I do control, it's just going to enable that. And then when I release control, it's just going to go back to the arrow. So we have the main function, the secondary function, and we have a third function. Now, it's going to be this one. If I go and hover on this one, it's going to say link, arrow, and range tools. What the F is this? So this means that now when I link this, when I enable this, the arrow and the range are working together with the secondary option. It's the secondary tool. So what this means is that if I go with my mouse and I go to the upper part of the waveform, now it's going to be a range tool. I can use it to select different parts, and we're going to talk about this range tool in a minute, but we can select different parts. And if I go at the bottom, now it's going to be the arrow tool. So I can select things. So same thing is going to happen here. I can select, or at the bottom, I just can go and use the arrow. And still, if you do control, you're going to be using your secondary function, which is going to be the paint in this case. Or maybe I just can change it to, I don't know, maybe the slice or something like that. Now it's going to be a slice, we can do a range, or we can do an arrow. So we can do 3 things at the same time. Now, sometimes it's a little bit confusing to use this because sometimes all of this is just going to be very small. And maybe you just don't like this behavior of, just going at the top or maybe the bottom. If you just don't want this, go right there and just disable and you're done. So let's move on to the next one. It's going to be the range tool, this one. So this range tool, what we can do, we can just select different parts. So let's say I'm working on this clip, right? And I want to select some parts of this and I want to maybe chop it and put it right there on the other timeline. Just let me just make this a little bit smaller and this one a little bit smaller. All right, there we go. So I want to select this. So what we can do, you just can click, you can hover, you can select whatever you want. And when you're done, what you can do is just delete it, slice it, or you can just duplicate, or you can chop it. So by default, when you select, you can just click and hold and then drag it right here at the bottom. And it's just going to chop it from here. And same thing if I do this, you can just click and then drop it to maybe a different track or maybe a different place. Now the thing is right now is just chopping it. And maybe I just don't want to do this. I just maybe want to copy and or maybe duplicate. So I'm going to be going back and just going to leave it like it was. And right now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to maybe just copy this one. Now with most of the tools that you have right here, when you do control, it's going to switch. And you can see it right there. I'm pressing the control. It's going to switch to the arrow tool. So now when we drag, instead of chopping it, it's going to duplicate it. Right? It's just, just a different thing. So let me go back to what we had from before. So we have more tricks. I'm going to select something like that. If you double click with the range tool, it's going to slice or split whatever section you selected. And now if you can of course do multiple times, you just can go there. Now we have this section. Remember, if you do control, you're going to be selecting this clip, or you can select that one. Now what you can do, instead of selecting range, if you don't select the range and you just double click, and notice the cursor is right there, is going to chop it. It's going to slice it. So now the range tool works like the split tool. Just by double clicking, it's just going to chop whatever you have right there. So let me just go back. Right, so back to whatever we had from before. Now let's just keep working on this because we have a few more options, a few more things that we can do with the range tool. So right now, if I select something, I can just select this. And maybe I just want to select a different part that lives within the same clip. Now, if I do so, I'm going to be selecting, but it's just going to deselect the other one, which is maybe not what I want to do. I want to select multiple parts and then just maybe duplicate or copy or, whatever. So in this case, I'm just going to select something, whatever, it doesn't matter. And I'm going to hold Shift and I'm going to do the same thing. And now you can select multiple parts. Now, all of this also works on different channels. If I go right here and just select a different part from the waveform, when I drag it, it's just going to, make a copy. In this case, if I just wanted to copy, it's going to do it like that. And remember, with the control, we just can duplicate. Right? So that's just going to work. So let me just make it a little bit bigger. So what we can do now, we know that when we do Shift, we can select multiple things from different clips. We know this. Now, maybe you didn't notice when you do Shift, it's giving you right there on the cursor. We get the cross, but we get the plus. So the plus is, again, you can select multiple things. Now, if you do Control, it's going to show you a minus. And this is because you can deselect whatever you did. If you repent, just doing Alt and then clicking is going to delete the range or the selection for this track. And this works on, on all of this. So if I do this, it's going to deselect this track. But if I select multiple things just like this, it's going to select just this track, not this one. And if I do Control or Alt in this case, and I click that, it's just going to deselect. Now also, and I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. Now we are using the snap to grid. So everything that we do is going to be snapped. Even if I move the cursor, notice it's just snapping to the grid right there at the top. It's just snapping. You can disable the snapping by clicking here or just pressing the letter N on your keyboard. It's just going to disable. But the snapping is really useful. Sometimes you want to keep it on. Now the thing is that with the range tool, is going to snap by default. And maybe you just don't want this. You just don't want it to snap. So what you can do when you start selecting something right there, and I'm selecting is snapping. But if I don't want for this to snap, I can do Shift and it's going to disable, for the time being, the snapping. And I can just freely or smoothly move around and do my selection. Now, remember that you need to click, select the range, and then while you're holding the mouse, then do Shift, and it's going to allow you to do this. If you do Shift and you select what you're doing multiple selections, just like we did before. In this case, you need to select and drag and then do Shift to enable this feature. So as you can see, with every single tool, we have some useful things we can do, some different useful things we can do. Now, some other tools are just going to be a little bit less complete than this one. So now we need to talk about the split tool. So the split, as you can guess it, is just going to split whatever is that you want to split. In this case, it's going to go right there and right there. And just like the other tools, when we hold the control, we just can perform arrow functions, like maybe, trimming the volume, or maybe going to this one and make this a little bit shorter, something like that. Let me just go in detail and do something like this. And maybe on the other one, where is it? Right there. I just can, maybe do something like that. Now, and I'm holding the control to convert this to an arrow. So that's the main purpose of the split. You just split and then you just perform or you just do whatever that you want to do. Just like the range tool and pretty much everything else, the split tool is going to snap to grid. So remember, doing the letter N is not going to snap. So now you can chop whatever it is that you want to chop and then enable the snap to grid if you wanted to. But for now, I'm just going to go back to whatever we had from before, because we're going to move on to the next tool, which is the erase tool. Right, so the erase tool is a pretty simple tool. Right, when you select it, if you hover whatever action, whatever event, you just click and it's just going to kaboom, it's going to delete it. Maybe you're thinking, what is the point of having this? We can easily maybe go right there, have this the split as a secondary tool. So if I go right there at the bottom, or maybe just here, I'm going to hold control. I'm going to do something like that. And then we can just select this and I can do delete and I can do delete and it's just going to instantly delete it, right? And you're right. We just can't do this easily with the arrow tool instead of just switching to the erase tool. Now, the thing is that to do all of this, I needed to do control to slice first. And then what I need to do, I need to select the clip. Let me just go back just to show you. I need to select the clip and then go to the delete key. So all of this is just a workflow issue because I need to do multiple things. I need to select and I need to go and press a key on my keyboard. I need to select with the mouse and I need to do the delete on my keyboard. And this, if you have a lot of things going on that you want to delete, you want to remove, it sucks. It sucks, you know that word. So now if you make multiple splits, just like I did, let me just go there. With this one, you can easily just go kaboom, kaboom, and there you go. So you don't need to select and press a key. It's going to instantly go and delete it. Now remember that you can easily be on this one, and as soon as you go to the number 4, you're going to switch back to the erase, and if you go to the number 1, you can easily go right here. So this is very useful. Again, depends on what you want to do. If you need to perform multiple actions, go to the erase. It's just going to be a little bit easier, right? And if not, just do it with the arrow. Just completely up to you. Right, so let's talk about the paint tool. And this is going to be on your keyboard, the number 5. So when you go to the number 5, it's just going to go there, okay? Now, this one, just like the arrow, has secondary functions. Now, we are going to be talking about them, but remember that when we have the arrow, when we go to here, we can select by just tapping several times the number 1. The secondary functions, well, this one works the same. If I go to the number 5, it's going to be it's going to toggle us through the different options that we have inside, right? Now, the first option is freehand. Now, the paint tool has 2 main functions. The first one can be that if you go to an empty track or maybe to an instrument track, that's actually a little bit better, you can just draw a clip like this. Just click and drag and it's going to create that clip for you. Now, in this case, since we are working, this is an audio track, makes no sense. But if you have an instrument track, you can easily create a MIDI clip just like that. Now, the other function of this one, where it really shines, is going to be when we do automation. So I will go make this a little bit bigger. And right here, you have the automation icon. You can go there, or you can select the track and you can type the letter A, and it's going to show the automation for this track. Now, in this case, what I want to do, you might have it off. I want to automate the volume, right? Let's just pretend that we want to do that. So the first option is going to be freehand. And freehand, it means that you can drag, just, click and draw whatever it is that you want to do, whatever automation you want to do to draw. Pretty simple. And maybe you're thinking, dude, can we can do this with the arrow? Yeah, well, not really. With the arrow, you just need to create breaking points just like this. And then you just need to go to work. And it's just, a little bit harder. With the other one, you can just easily do kaboom, and there you go. That's your automation. Pretty simple, right? It's just a different way. Now, the thing is that if you want to create something a little bit more controlled, you have the other options. You have the line. For example, if I go to line, now instead of freehand drawing, we are going to be drawing a line just like this. Or we can go the other way or meet halfway or something like that. And you just, can do some things like this. Now, if I go to the other one, the parabola is just going to be like that. It's going to create this for us. And all of these are just different tools that we can create for our, to our advantage. Now, we have the square, and this is going to be a completely different thing. And as you can see, we have a square, a triangle, a saw, and a sine. So they are just different waveforms. Now, the square is going to give us a square. Now, how this works is that depends on where you start drawing, it's where you're going to be putting this. Now, you can go right here at the bottom, and it will start at the bottom. And as they go up, you can do this. Or if you start up, it's going to start up and then just go down. Or if you start right there in between, you can have something a little bit more controlled. Now, one thing that you need to take into account is that whatever you do right here is going to be matching your options that you have right here. So if the snapping is adaptive, it's going to create the waveform to whatever we can see on the grid. Now, if I go there and change it to quantize, now the snapping, it's following the quantize we have right here. So if I do it again, it's just going to be a little bit different. Can you see that now it's just 1/16? If I go to 1/4 is going to be like that. And if I keep going low, it's just going to be like that. Now your quantize is deciding, the shape pretty much. Now you always need to take this into account. I'm going to go back to 1/16 and I'm going to keep it in quantize. Why not? So if the next one is going to be a triangle, and you could assume what this is, it's just a triangle. The next one is going to be a saw, and then again, it's just a saw. And the other one is going to be a sine wave, so we just create a sine wave. Now the next one is really magic. I'm going to go to the transform. So whatever you do on your automation, what it does, and I'm going to do it right here, is going to select, it's like a select tool. You just draw, like the range tool, you just click and drag, and you're going to be selecting some automation. And this is going to shape depending on where you're going to be kind of doing or dragging or, going up or down. So let's just do it right here. I'm going to be selecting all of this. So if you go right there and you hover on this one, it's going to say stretch. And this one at the bottom is going to say stretch as well. So if I go down, it's going to stretch it, or you can make it smaller, or you can make it bigger. So that's what the stretch means. Now the other one is going to be this Q. If I do this, I can go at the bottom and do something like that, or go at the top and just, make it like that. The other one is the same thing. So I'm going to go there and do it like this. And now the ones at the corner are going to be the distort. So if I do this, it's going to do that. And just by using the transform, you can just create really cool automations. That's, the whole point of the transform. All right, so that's all the tools that we have available. Now, remember that if you don't want any of this, you can go to here, just drag and just delete your automation. So I'm going to get out of the automation and I'm just going to adjust this to whatever we had from before. And we need to talk about the next tool, which is going to be the mute tool. Now this one, it's just like the eraser. You might not want to use it if you don't want to, because maybe if I wanted to, I can just maybe go right here, select the splice as a secondary tool, and go right here. I'm just going to chop it. I'm going to chop this, chop that. I'm back to the arrow tool. I'm going to be selecting this. And what we can do, and maybe I'm going to be holding shift so we can select multiple clips when we hold shift. And what we can do shift and do the letter M. And this is going to mute whatever clip we select. If I select a whole clip and I do shift and M at the same time, it's going to mute it. So we are back to what we discussed about the erase tool. This works, but we need to select and then we need to do shift and do the letter M. What is the point? If you need to do it a lot of times, well, you just go to the mute tool and you just click, kaboom, mute, mute. That's the point. Okay, so I'm going to go back to whatever we had from before, like that. And now we need to talk about the bend tool. Now I'm just going to give you a quick explanation of how this works. Now the bend deserves a whole new big ass video about this, because we can do a million things. Right now with this one we have quick access to do audio bend, but if you go to this one we have a whole section to do this, and this is kind of the advanced bending side. We are not going to talk about this. We are just going to be covering this tool. Now, if you want to create breakpoints and bend the audio, if you do it on this mode, you're not going to be able to see it. You're going to be able to bend, but it's just going to, a little bit weird because you don't see it. I'm going to make it bigger. So if I do right click, you have an option right there that says bend marker. So when I click it, it's going to take us to this view. So now when we add a marker, we can see it. So maybe I'm going to go right there and I'm going to create a marker. I'm going to go right here, just create a marker, and I'm going to go there and create a marker. Now, if we wanted to delete them by double clicking, when you go right there, you just select it, it's just going to delete all the markers, just double clicking. And if I create a marker right there and I feel like I need to adjust the position, when you go to the Alt and you go right there and you do Alt, notice the icon just changes to, we can move it around. So if I maybe want to select this part and just adjust this and just put it right there, I just can move it and adjust the breakpoints. That's the whole point. And I'm holding the Alt key. Now, at the end of the day, what is the point of this tool? So with this one, you can bend audio. So you can stretch or you can squash. So if I go there, notice it says, gives us that icon. So when I drag this, it's going to do that. Now, this part of the audio is going to be squashed, and the other one is going to be stretched. So this one is going to sound a little bit faster. Let me just solo this. It's kind of a 303 kind of a sound. So if I play it, there's that sound. Now, so you're stretching, you're just compressing, I'm sorry. And this one is slower because you're stretching. So this is what it does. You can select different breakpoints and make tiny adjustments, maybe to your clip. This is essential when you're mixing or you're just producing. Sometimes you just need to make adjustments. So this is the way you do it with the bend tool. Pretty simple. Now you need to be careful with this tool because if you stretch it too much, and let me just go right there and just get rid of this one, or maybe you're just going to use it. I'm going to do something like this. So I'm stretching as F. So when I play it, you can even use this as an FX, maybe just as a resample it, record it into a different track, and then maybe use it on Impact XD and just create different sounds with this highly stretched audio. So you can use it for that purpose. But sometimes when you go too much, when you stretch too much, it's going to tell you, dude, you're stretching too much. So when you really stretch too much, it's going to be really red. And when you really compress or squash, it's going to be really green. So you're going to notice the difference when you're squashing too much or when you're compressing too much. And if you do too much of either, it's going to start giving you artifacts, and it's just not going to sound that good. So you need to be careful with this tool. Now, I'm going to be creating a completely different video about this. So, but again, if I talk about this right now, it's just a little bit off topic. So I might prefer to keep it on a different video. So last but not least, we have the listen tool. And this one, it's something very useful and it's very simple. So sometimes you just want to audition different parts of whatever arrangement or different clips or different sections. So what we do usually, we just loop this section. We go right there. We just enable the loop and I solo the track and I play it and I play it again and I play it again. Maybe something like that, just to see, just to hear what's going on right there. So the listen tool is going to simplify all of this. Now, what you can do with this, with the listen, you just can maybe focus on the part where you want to listen. And right there, notice that you get the icon. So this is it's just gonna let you audition that part when you click. Now, if I click and hold, it's just gonna keep playing, right? And as soon as I release it, it's gonna stop playing. Now, what this does by default, right now, all the tracks are, enabled. They are not soloed. It's going to solo, and if you take a look at right here, it's gonna solo the track for you. And when you release it, it's gonna unsolo the track. So this is kind of doing that job for you. So now, if you want to audition different parts, you just can go and jump and easily, listen to different parts of your arrangement. All right, so that's it pretty much. Now remember, if you like this, if you learned something new, like and subscribe. It's free and it really helps. And if you want to buy me a coffee just to say thanks, you can go to the links at the description. You have links for Google Thanks now. You have a PayPal link and you have Patreon. So you can be a 1-month patron. Just buy me a coffee and say thanks. You can do that if you wish. All right, so see you on the next one.